Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are 2/3 of the Houthi PC small group Signal Chat. Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
Yes, Tom is he's actually interstate this week, and we saw him. But because he's interstate, he doesn't have the equipment necessarily to log in, and he's busy doing other stuff. So we're home in our rooms, respectively, and you get to listen to us drone on about world politics and how everything's going great for the next
short
hour.
show this week. Not really much to talk about. Just everyone's kicking goals. Everything's going great. Ceasefires are holding.
Right.
Everything's super good.
Yeah, meeting expectations, exceeding KPIs.
Exceeding expectations, I'd say.
Yeah.
Wait. Everything. Gestures and everything.
The world. Top story this week. Apparently, the leaders of the free world have got terrible OPSEC.
Apparently, the people who are running the world are just the dumbest motherfuckers alive. They are just, the dumbest person you've ever met, where you came away from a conversation with that person and you went, wow, that guy is so fucking dumb. I can't believe that he thinks, walking on the grass is going to heal him with energy. Like, that's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. These guys look at that guy and go, brilliant. What a genius. The dumbest motherfuckers you've ever heard of are still smarter than these guys because they've never violated state secrets on accident. As dumb as the dumbest fucking person you've ever met is, they've never been dumb enough to accidentally violate state secrets.
Indeed. So if you haven't heard by now, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine. Now, The Atlantic magazine, for reference, not exactly a pro-Trump news.
No, it's a sort of center-left journalistic institution, very sort of like straight down the line, kind of like institutionalists, but obviously left of center, very anti-Trump.
They've been fairly critical of Trump. They were basically equating him to Nazis very early on.
Well, as does anyone with a brain in their head and eyes and ears, Adam. So I don't know if that's but yes.
But and Trump has said that these people, that the editor-in-chief is a horrible journalist, and paraphrasing a little bit, but as basically called the Atlantic, recently as well as in the past, like it's a rag, it's not a very reputable organization. Yeah. So it's so weird that the editor-in-chief of the Atlantic just got added to a group chat on the messaging platform Signal with all of the American security executives. When I say that, I mean like Michael Waltz, Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth,
the whole clown car,
Vance,
Marco Rubio, just all the worst fuckheads, just the nightmare blunt rotation all in one chat. And they called the chat the Houthi PC small group because it was about extremely classified plans to bomb Yemen, where the Houthis reside. And they were organizing this presumably through an encrypted Signal chat. So for those who don't know, Signal is a messaging platform that allows you end-to-end encryption. So if I've got a phone with Signal and you have a phone with Signal, I can send a message that is completely encrypted from my phone to yours. Not even Signal presumably can read it. And, that's a way of having as secure as possibly feasible for a consumer-grade app, encrypted messaging. The problem with conducting classified state business this way is that although the information is encrypted, what it doesn't provide for is the idea that you could be doing this on your commercially available phone, which might be subject to, like state, sponsored hacking attempts, right? So if you're Marco Rubio or if you're Pete Hegseth,
every single hacker group in Russia is now going.
Yeah, basically everyone who's got a computer is basically looking at this going, how do we get onto fucking Pete Hegseth's phone because he's conducting state business off of there. And so it's not a secure way of conducting state business. Now, if you were to hop into a skiff, which is like basically the cone of silence from Get Smart. That's not a reference anyone's going to understand.
I understand it, and I appreciated it. Thank you.
It's basically a secure pod, sort of facility setup where you can conduct, top secret meetings through, communications channels. It's meant to be as secure as possible, right? And
I'm sure there are also devices like
when you
hand it out.
So when you work at the Pentagon or when you work at the White House, you get handed a work phone versus a personal phone and other devices. You can contact each other again through like an encrypted messaging platform like Signal, but like only for the purposes of saying like go to a skiff so we can have this conversation elsewhere properly, securely. And there's obviously like a number of problems with this. Anyway, so they added Jeffrey Goldberg, who's the editor of The Atlantic, into this chat. Jeffrey Goldberg, understandably, was like, is this some kind of like disinfo op that someone's trying to run on me? He didn't believe it at first. He was obviously doing his job as a journalist, keeping notes, taking receipts to see like...
None of them reacted for the fact he was added, by the way.
No.
It was like they just didn't see the notification or something.
It seems like it appears as though Mike Waltz was the one who added him to the chat. He's the National Security Advisor.
But he's never met him.
This is the thing. He goes on Laura Ingraham. These people, the dumbest motherfuckers alive. So this guy, Mike Waltz, goes on Laura Ingraham's show. And even she's like, but how do you get in your phone if you've never met him? And he's like, because someone messaged me. And like he got sucked in somehow, and we really need to investigate if he was like trying to get himself like sucked into the group. And they're trying to make out like Jeffrey Goldberg like hacked his way into the Signal chat, which is like absolutely not how it works. You fucking morons. So someone needs to add him to the chat, and they're trying to like suggest that like something nefarious happened and he like hacked in or infiltrated. But like aside from how ridiculous all of that is, like what they're doing. In conducting this state business on an unsecure channel like Signal is a crime. Like if you were anyone in uniform that did this, you would be in a fucking CIA black site somewhere, strung up by your testicles, getting quote unquote enhanced interrogated.
This is specifically a violation, an alleged violation of the Espionage Act.
Well, several different acts. So there's the Presidential Records Act, which basically says if you're the president or you work for the president or you're one of his underlings, you need to conduct all your business through established channels so those records can be preserved, for if they need to be audited later or for whatever reason, right? So... And this is why it was such a big deal that Hillary Clinton was using her own email server in 2016, because presumably if it's a personal email server and she just decides she doesn't want to keep those records anymore, she could delete them if there's something in there that makes her look not good. So it's a violation of the Presidential Records Act, number one. It's a violation potentially of the Espionage Act because they have disclosed state secrets directly to a journalist.
There was no battle plans in the chat though, George. They were just having a great discussion about how Europe.
This dumb motherfucker, Pete Hegseth, gets on television and says, well, we weren't discussing war plans, we weren't discussing times and dates, end of story. And of course, Jeffrey Goldberg's like, bro, I've got screenshots of everything. So it's like, okay, well, now that you've said that, and obviously this stuff isn't classified, so I can publish it, immediately follows up with the second story being like, hey, here's all the fucking things they said to me. And it's like, take off at 1400 hours. We're going to bomb this with that, using this, like over here, over there with these people, the payload's going to be over this at this point. It's like, bro, these are literally plans to attack. If the enemy got this before he published this story, that would have endangered US personnel, right? Like there's a reason. Imagine if D-Day, if you just sent a message to the Germans the day before being like, bro, we're going to do D-Day. Well,
they did, but they were like, we're going to do D-Day 100 miles up the coast.
Okay, but if you were accurate and said, we're going here and we're doing D-Day tomorrow at 12, make sure you're there, that would be bad for US soldiers. Like, you shouldn't need to explain this to people. Anyway, so Jeffrey Goldberg immediately was like, here are my fucking receipts. There obviously were attack plans and confidential shit that you guys posted in this unsecured chat. How do you explain that? And they're like, we don't know if it's real. He's a dodgy journalist. I'm like, hang on. You guys are smearing this guy saying he's like a corrupt journalist and he can't be trusted and he's a dirt muckraker. So isn't it then worse that you sent this confidential information to this guy who can't be trusted? Yeah. Like, yeah, isn't it even worse that you sent this guy this information to a dodgy guy? Like,
we kind of missed a step here. We got a bit excited. Obviously, the reason why this is significant is because, like, basically during this messaging exchange, the US attacked Yemen directly, which is one of the first times they've done that. Not the first time, but like one of the first times.
I don't know. American presidents love bombing Yemen. It's kind of their favorite pastime. It's just, we've got anything on a Tuesday. Well, let's chuck some bombs on Yemen.
Yeah. Well, actually, I cut that back. I know there's been lots of drone strikes on Yemen, but it's probably one of the first in recent memory. Is probably a better way of putting it. Historically, there's been lots of shit happening in Yemen, but the point being, US actively launched a number of strikes on Houthi targets in order to allegedly help clear shipping through the
and that's when Goldberg knew it was real, because like they said they were going to do the thing, and then he sees the news reports that they've done the thing. They're like, holy shit, this is real. I've actually been, for whatever reason, accidentally added to this fucking group chat. And then it's come out. I didn't tell you about this. So Mike Waltz, has a Venmo. Do you know what Venmo is? It's where people send each other money.
No. Right. Oh, actually, I've heard of it, but yeah.
It's like a money app where you go out to dinner with some friends, like say you're in the States, you go out to dinner with some friends, you split the bill, and then so-and-so, they send each other money through Venmo to like pay each other back for stuff. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Mike Waltz, this dumb motherfucker, his Venmo is public. Your Venmo is public by default, so you can go through and see all the transactions that people have done. And this guy apparently loves speaking to journalists because he speaks to a bunch of people at Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. And so what the Trump administration has realized, and this is why Mike is probably about to see the underside of a bus very soon, is that this guy fucking loves talking to journalists, and that's why Jeffrey Goldberg's number was in his phone to begin with. The Signal doesn't just give you random numbers. It
was because it was from a Venmo receipt, basically.
No. Well, they can prove that, but this guy is Venmoing like drinks and stuff with, journalists and dinners and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. So he's regularly in contact with journalists, and therefore,
so there's a proof there that they were interacting.
Evidence that he must be in regular contact with journalists. One of whom is Jeffrey Goldberg, even though he denied knowing him. And that's probably why his number was in his phone, is because he's been leaking shit about the Trump administration to all these fucking journalists. They're so fucking... Why do you have a public Venmo? You're the national security advisor. Why do you have public anything, bro? He's got I sent, fucking Brett Bayer from Fox $15 for a drink. It's just like, this guy is just like, loves talking to journalists, loves documenting it publicly. and then goes, I don't know how his number got on my phone. Okay, Mike. Okay, buddy.
And it wasn't just him. It was obviously Hegseth and also Tulsi Gabbard was also in that chat. We have a clip of her. So basically, basically the first article, Goldberg was like, I'm not going to release the information of the actual attack because I feel like that would be a bit much. And
he took himself out of the chat because he didn't want to see any classified stuff he wasn't supposed to see.
Yeah. After the first of it. But so initially it was just posts around sort of them whining about Europe and how they need to get involved and the president's intentions and yada, yada, yada. And then, so basically everyone came out with this line of it's just a chat where we were just discussing things. There was no specifics.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of people, really deeply engaged in foreign policy, just acting like complete professionals, talking with lots of fire emojis and fists and American flags, just really super professional stuff.
And then, as you pointed out earlier, after all that was said, Goldberg was like, well, no, fine. If you're going to deny that, then here is the information.
Fucking obviously, I've got fucking screenshots, you dumb fucks.
And Tulsi Gabbard was I guess, I mean, most people just did press conferences, but she was in the unfortunate position, or the fortunate position, depending on which side you look at it, of being at a, what was it? And I've already forgotten, we looked it up before.
Senate Intelligence Committee.
Senate Intelligence Committee over the course of a couple of days while this was happening. Let's play this clip. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, here we go. So this is the first part, and I'll tell you when it switches to the second part. You can tell because she starts saying something completely different. So this is March 25th.
Conversation at some point include information on weapons packages, targets, or timing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Director Gabbard, same question.
Same answer, and defer to the Department of Defense on that question.
Well, those are two different answers, but you're saying that was not part of the conversation.
My knowledge.
The precise operational issues were not part of this conversation.
Correct.
So this is March 26th. You'll note one day later.
Answer yesterday was based on my recollection or the lack thereof on the details that were posted there. I was not, and what was shared today reflects the fact that I was not directly involved with that part of the Signal chat and replied at the end reflecting the effects, the very brief effects that the National Security Advisor had shared.
So it's your testimony that less than 2 weeks ago, you were on a Signal chat that had all of this information about F-18s and MQ-9 Reapers and targets on strike, and you in that 2-week period simply forgot that that was there. That's your testimony?
My testimony is I did not recall the exact details of what was included there.
That was not your testimony. Your testimony was that you were not aware of anything related to weapons packages, targets, and timing.
Yeah. So...
Oops. I mean, a lot of the messages I've seen in the various other articles that have since shared the information from The Atlantic haven't really featured any text from her. I mean, I'm assuming maybe she was just like she was in the chat, but just wasn't like looking at it. But
not to my knowledge.
Either way,
there wasn't any stuff to do with operations or anything like that. And then the day after, she said, "Oopsie poopsie, I lied." In fact, I did recall, and there was stuff in there about that. Sorry. Perjury is a crime as well. Some other crimes that might be committed could be a violation of the Federal Records Act, which or laws concerning the destruction of records. So, for example, 18 U.S. Code 2071, which prohibits the destruction or concealment of government records and carries penalty, including imprisonment, for up to 3 years. So there's like 3-4 different things that they've violated there by participating in this chat. There is, I think it's called JWIX or something like that, which is like a secure government email server for secure government shit. None of this shit should be on Signal in the first place. Like the fact that they were even on Signal discussing anything to do with this is already a violation of what they're supposed to be doing, because Signal you can set it up where messages self-destruct after a certain amount of time, right? So it is like across several different vectors not okay that they've done this. And yet, like, do we think there's going to be any kind of accountability? Do we think anyone's going to get in trouble? No. Trump was like, I think maybe the signal was broken. I was like, I don't think Trump understands what signal is.
It's interesting as well. Like one of the excerpts here, the ABC shared, they're sort of talking around what the president was actually intending when we had that meeting, like trying to
pass out what the fuck was, nonsense was spewing from his brain. Yeah.
And I guess the other big thing from this whole exchange, it's quite clear that it's not just Trump who is anti-Europe. Like J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth are very much on the fuck Europe bandwagon, and as though somehow the Europeans are leeching off American, like they're discussing in this message thread that by launching
why should we bother this helps the Europeans more than us, sort of thing. Like
yeah. And like if we do this, what can we ask for in return from Europe was the other thing that they're talking about.
Cool, normal. This is how we talk about allies stuff.
Yeah.
So, friend of the show, Polyverse, is writing in. I wonder if they'll move their chats to Snapchat because the messages just disappear there. quite possibly, you might be subjected to Pete Hegseth's asshole
pics.
at some. Oh, okay, yeah, feet pics, feet pics at some point. Genuine question: was he drunk when he did this?
Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Was he like a couple of cocktails deep? And he's like,
because
"Yo,
it was
watch these boys. I'm going to send this to the chat. They're going to fucking love this."
But like, this chat was happening over the course of like several days.
Yeah.
So obviously, unless he's drunk for the entire time, which knowing Pete Hegseth,
I don't know.
could be possible.
It's not possible.
Apparently he's sober now. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, buddy.
Not good. So that was like the most out of the last 2 weeks. We haven't done a show in 2 weeks. Out of the last 2 weeks, that was like probably the most crazy thing that happened.
It's funny that this story has gotten so much purchase. Yeah, because it's not. Yeah, it's exactly right. Like, it's definitely not the most fucked thing the Trump administration has done this week. But for whatever reason, everyone's like, "Oh, it's
insane.
It's so relatable.
Insane.
It's so relatable. Whomst amongst us hasn't sent? Let he who is not, sent a message to the wrong person cast the first stone." Like, it's
like popped an image through your ex or something. Like just this random journalist that I may or may not have had dinner with. Or
like Peter Dutton texted Samantha Maiden that she was a mad witch. When he was speaking about her to someone else and he accidentally texted it to her.
Oops.
Oopsie poopsie.
Again, why do you have these people's numbers on your phone? So, not one of the most fucked things the Trump administration did this week. They've been doing it, I would say, for a while, but this is just what we're hearing.
We're starting to see the escalation coming through now, yeah.
Yeah. So broad daylight, there is footage from several different angles of ICE undercover, trying to be surreptitiously incognito, but very obviously just abducting someone.
Just black bagging some fucking woman on the street. Yeah. So Rumeysa Ozturk, who's a student studying at Tufts University. She was detained on Tuesday by federal immigration agents, those ICE agents, and on Wednesday was being held in the South Louisiana ICE Processing Center. Now, there was an order from a Massachusetts federal judge which said you can't take Ms. Ozturk out of state. And the government's like, "Oh, we didn't see that till after we already took her out of the state," which is like obvious horse shit. And they're like, "Okay, well, like if you've done that, couldn't you just like take her back?" And they're like, no. So they've just they've just fucking renditioned this woman off the street.
Yeah.
Like fucking and just like fucking taken her to like a fucking CIA black site in Louisiana, just fucking disappeared her for the great crime of, can you tell us, Adam, what was her great crime?
Oh, she said a few things about Palestinian statehood and the war.
So she was like massively pro-Hamas and like advocated a lot of violence against Israelis.
No, she was just saying that Israel should probably chill out a bit. That's all.
Okay.
Just like.
So she just had like she had a byline on a newspaper article saying
wrote an op-ed. Yeah.
Just saying they should divest, that Tufts should divest from Israel because of all the fucked shit that they're doing. Yeah, that's it. So not a crime as much as it is just exercising her basic right to First Amendment free, protected free speech. But
but she's a student. She's not actually an American, so it doesn't apply. Although, I mean, this is funny because it's the second very public incidence of this happening. Obviously, the previous one we spoke about the last show, and I forgot the gentleman's name. But he was, in fact, he had a green card. So I don't understand what her residency status is.
So she is a student, so she's got a visa.
So she's on a student visa, right?
Mahmoud Khalil, not Muhammad, was the Palestinian activist that got fucking black bagged last week, and now this one, and this follows reports of other students elsewhere also facing similar kinds of detainment and potential extradition over, and it's not like anyway. So we'll view the footage. And then we'll talk about it. But they literally just like accost this woman on the street. She thinks she's been kidnapped. People on the street are like, "What the fuck is happening? What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, don't worry, we're police." And they're like, "Are you? Because you've got masks." Like, what the fuck? Anyway, so here's the clip.
I'm able to I'm trying to get you react. Okay, with the police.
Okay, let's go. Ma'am, you got
Yeah, let's bring everything.
Okay. Take a breath. Yep. We're going to take a nice little shower. Come on. We'll show you everything. Okay. Sure. Yep. You're fine.
Anything scary? We're the police. We're the police.
We're the police.
Yeah, you don't look like it. Why are you hiding your faces? Why are you hiding your faces?
Yep. Okay, take everything. Yep, I'm going to get the doctor. Got it with you. Let's go.
Yeah, we're going to take a look.
And yeah, so it took about a minute and she's accosted on the street. They snatch her phone and her backpack off her. And yeah, she's got her hands behind her back and she's arrested and hauled off the street like a fucking... it's chilling. Like it actually makes me sick to watch that footage. Like I know we're joking about it because we're trying desperately to be a comedy podcast in the end times. But like it makes me physically ill to watch someone who has done nothing wrong just get fucking black bagged and taken to some fucking black site, in another state. Yeah. Like it really is sickening and chilling to see that.
The additionally fucked thing about this is that, of course, both in the previous case as well as this one, there's been federal court orders saying that the government needs to either release them or move them back to their initial state and various other things like that. But the ICE, so the Department of Homeland Security and by proxy the administration's response has just been to defy that.
Yeah.
So they are in open defiance of court orders.
Yeah, so they do this cute thing of like, oh, we didn't know the plane was over international waters, so it doesn't count that you told us to turn it around. And you issued that order verbally and we needed it written down for it to count. So they're not saying like, fuck you, suck my dick. But they are saying like they are not obeying federal judges' orders when they give them.
Well, this is probably a good way to segue to our next article, which is that it's obviously a deliberate strategy where they're saying, well, let's just see how far we can push this.
Let's see how far we can go. Just delay, deny, defer. Just keep putting it off. Yeah, we love obeying with court orders. Like, oh, love court orders. Don't get me wrong. Love obeying them. We're just going to do it later.
Are you going to return the person back to where they...
No, absolutely not. No. Right. No, we could. Yeah, we absolutely could, and we are not going to. It's a shame. We'll get you on the next one. The next time you give us a court order, we'll absolutely, just like just an IOU kind of on this like poor lady that we fucking...
Jetstar, just terrible customer service.
And also that that bag is 7.2 kilos. So you're actually going to have to check it. It's going to cost you $70. So,
so basically, next deportation crazy story. So there were 2 deportation flights on Saturday, where basically the Trump administration was allegedly, I mean, we don't know, was deporting what they said were 2 full plane loads of Venezuelan gang members.
Yes, that's in big air quotes for anyone who's not watching the stream. Yes, absolutely, totally Venezuelan gang members.
Which took off from Texas to Salvador. Mm-hmm. And midway through this flight, a federal judge was like, no, turn that around.
Turn that around, send it back.
George was like, well, as George said, the judge, they didn't do that. Yeah. They landed in Venezuela.
They're like, oh, sorry, it's in international waters. And the judge is like, but the fucking pilots are American and being controlled by the American government, and you're sending them to a prison that's being paid for by the Americans. Like, of course you can fucking turn it around. Like, just human rights don't exist in international waters is not a thing.
So basically on Friday, Trump quietly, apparently, signed an executive order which invoked this weird act from 1789, which is called
American
the Alien
Enemies
Act, which is something you use in a war.
In wartime,
to deport, and it was 238 of them, and allegedly they're members of the Tren de Aragua gang.
Yeah, Tren de Aragua. Yeah, no, it's fine.
I just really hit the bows.
Just hearing you just white your way through that was particularly gratifying to me. Yeah, no, the Tren de Aragua gang, which originally came out of it, like I think it was a labor movement. It was like a trained union initially, and then like ended up morphing into this gang. There's no evidence that these guys were part of Tren de Aragua. Just that they have tattoos and are Venezuelan. Some of them may or may not even be Venezuelan. There's been no hearing. There's been no determination. They've just scooped up these fucking guys who look Venezuelan and have tattoos. One of them that they showed was an autism awareness tattoo, right? Has got nothing to do with Tren de Aragua gang tattoos. They even the gang, Tren de Aragua, has stopped tattooing their gang members because of law enforcement action, right? So it's like it's not even a thing that they really do anymore. Because that's how they get targeted.
The Venezuelan gang members are doing in America. Like it's just a lot of pictures.
It's a holiday.
In this puzzle.
It's work or pleasure.
Really, like
what do you have to declare? Anyway. Say you're coming here to do any crimes? It's just like it's so insane. How
were they rounded up? Where were they? They were in Texas initially or something.
Yeah,
I don't know. Anyway,
they are scooping people up off the streets who could conceivably be Venezuelan gang members. And the thing is, if you take them to this prison, Bukele's El Salvadorian, mega prison that's being funded with US tax dollars, and you shave their heads and you put them all in white fucking boxes and you stand them behind Kristi Noem in a fucking propaganda video, yeah, everyone's going to look like a fucking criminal. But there's been no adjudication of whether these people even are who the government is saying that they are. No evidence that they've committed any crimes. They've just literally been fucking scooped up and deported to a place that may not even be their fucking home country.
Yeah.
Like, it is completely illegal. Like, I know he keeps saying, it's illegal. And I know he's saying, I'm saying when the president does it, it's not illegal. But, like, you're not allowed. There's a little thing that you fucking Constitution humpers love and have in your breast pocket at all this little pocket constitutions that these wankers come around. It doesn't start at the Second Amendment. It starts at the First Amendment. They have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. Even when they were utilizing this Alien Enemies Act, they can't use it because they're not at war with El Salvador, right? Number one, you can't utilize the act if you're not actually at war or Venezuela or whatever. Like, and this is why they reckon that the Trump administration was pressuring Justin Trudeau to classify these cartels as terrorist organization, so then they could say, well, then they're enemies of the state, and so all the rules are off, we can do whatever the fuck we want, right?
Yeah.
But like even in Germany, Nazi Germany, when like the last time this act was used was like Japanese internment camps and Germans being detained during the Second World War. Even then, the judges said, okay, but we actually need to have a hearing to determine whether they're actually like Nazis or not. We can't just like send it back to Germany. Like, so it's, like even actual literal Nazis were given more due process than these people have just been fucking scooped off the street.
Well, what's interesting is that, and we'll talk about the Kristi Noem video in a second, we'll play it for you.
Yeah.
So this prison, Sekot, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It is a terrorism confinement center, maximum security facility built in 2022, which was part of a brutal government crackdown on organised crime. It's now Salvador. You'll note we've been talking about Venezuela.
Yeah, different countries prisoners. To be clear.
The US, kind of like Australia's been doing, is basically, I guess it's taking this policy of like, well, if we can't take it back to the individual country.
Send them to Nauru. We got a whole empty facility on Nauru we could lend them.
Yeah, they're basically sending it to a third-party country.
Yeah. They saw our idea of like...
I guess El Salvador's taking some sort of financial windfall.
Oh, no, we know that they said they're going to give us like, I think it was like $3 or $6 million for these prisoners. It's not a lot of money for them. It's lots of money for us. It's going to help the prison pay for itself, basically. They've said it out loud. The reason we're taking him is for money.
Yeah, and I guess now that they're in El Salvador, like
that's it. Game over. What are you going to do? Even though
there's
it's a prison like paid for by Americans. It's like, well, this is why governments do this. This is why we had Christmas Island as Australia. This is why we had Nauru.
Well, not Christmas Island. If Christmas Island's Australian territory, Nauru, Manus Island.
Nauru and Manus Island are definitely not Australian territory, and that's why we had those processing centres there. Because even though federal courts said just because it's not your country doesn't mean you don't have an obligation of care and are not responsible under Australian law to these people. The Australian government says, well, it's a different country. So, like, who's going to sue us? You going to sue us? Are they going to sue us? It's all too hard. Like, it just goes into there's a reason that these countries like Australia, like America, have black sites in unaccountable third countries where they can just ship people off to, throw them in a black hole and throw away the key. It's the whole reason Guantanamo exists, right?
Previously it was Gitmo. Gitmo's, I don't know, I guess they've still got Gitmo, but
and they were trying to send immigrants there, and everyone was like, yeah, it makes no sense to send like 30,000 locked up immigrants here. Like, it's actually going to be way too hard. And they're like, forget about it. Don't worry about it. In that case, it just doesn't make any fucking sense.
Salvador. Anyway, so this is obviously not just like a one-off. There's a whole
systematic
propaganda effort behind all this is what I'm getting at. So Trump was obviously firing off things on his social media platforms, and then we got this wonderful thing from, when I say wonderful, terrifying thing from Kristi Noem, who's what's her position? She's a secretary of something?
She was the governor of, I think it was South Carolina, and I actually don't know what her current role is.
The Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security.
Yes, there you go. This is the woman who shot her own dog, for anyone who was wondering, where do I know the name Kristi Noem from? She was the lady who wrote in her memoir that she killed her own dog, and that's why she would be good at president, because hard decisions, including murdering puppies who don't obey you. Cool political instincts. Anyway, so there's this fun propaganda video that she's filmed in this. She's called it El Salvador's Terrorism Confinement Center, CESOT. And she's basically just saying to everyone, be good, otherwise this could happen to you. So let's hear some of Kristi Noem saying fucking words.
Here at CCOT today and visiting this facility. And first of all, I want to thank El Salvador and their president for their partnership with the United States of America to bring our terrorists here and to incarcerate them and have consequences for the violence that they have perpetuated in our communities. I also want everybody to know, if you come to our country illegally, this is one of the consequences you could face. First of all, do not come to our country illegally. You will be removed and you will be prosecuted. But know that this facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that we will use if you commit crimes against the American people.
Yeah, of course, there's no evidence that any of those people committed crimes or have been accused of crimes because, as I said, they got fucking renditioned and deported.
Or if there is, it's not like publicly available information. Do you know what I mean? Like let's assume some
those
of them
flights, we know for a fact.
We don't know.
There may be information about those people committing crimes. We don't know. Some of them we know. We can assume with a pretty good degree of certainty are not criminals. Because we know there was reported one of the guys that was renditioned is like a gay hairdresser who's like a member of the queer community and has like tattoos. And they're like, he's a Venezuelan gang member. And they're like, no, he's a theater tech. Like, obviously not. This guy's obviously not a fucking gang member. And there are other examples like that where there's just, there's no evidence that this person was involved in any sort of Venezuelan gang activity. They just look the part. And so...
And for the listeners, because obviously, we're broadcasting both on Twitch, YouTube, and we've also got, obviously this is an audio medium primarily. What we see behind us is dozens of male individuals, or what we assume male individuals. There might be some women in there as well. Maybe it'd have to be only males. They wouldn't put women in there as well. I'd assume it's just males. Anyway, that's beside the point. Lots of individuals wearing sort of shaved heads, or they've all got shaved heads.
They shave their heads. Yeah.
They shave their heads.
Yeah, that's part of going to this prison. Yeah.
And they're all sort of stacked in, 3 levels high within the frame of this image, which it's kind of terrifying because it kind of looks a bit like some sort of
concentration camp.
Concentration camp.
Looks like a fucking gulag, which is what it is. I think they can contain up to 40,000 people in this prison facility, this super prison, they said. It is a fucking concentration camp. Like, and they said, they're being detained for 1 year and is extendable, which means I guess they're going to fucking forever prisons. Who the fuck knows? I just like now is the time. Okay, if you're wondering when do we take to the streets and start protesting, Americans,
if you're a well-regulated militia, if there's any well-regulated militias out there, is that the right term? Well-regulated?
Yes, extremely well-regulated militias.
If there's any well-regulated militias out there, I'm just saying, if you don't like tyranny.
It looks a lot like government tyranny is what I'm saying.
It looks a lot like, there's a bit of government tyranny happening here. I would have thought you might want to have a look at that.
It's
and protest peacefully.
Yes. It's like now is the time where you need to get out on the streets. If you're thinking like, maybe it's so funny the way that they've like dripped this little fascism out. It hasn't been that long. It's only been like a couple of months. Okay, it's been 3 months since he took power, right? It hasn't even been the first 100 days. And yet it's been like fast enough that it's like terrifying that all these things are coming and the fire hose of like all these different things happening at once. But just slow enough that you can like feel comfortable enough to go home and like, watch, the Real Housewives of Las Vegas or whatever and like tune out, and we go, this is also hard. I'll worry about it tomorrow. But it's like, no, you need to worry about it today. Like if you needed a call to action to get out onto the fucking streets and stop what is happening, it's this. Sending people off to unaccountable fucking gulags in other countries. Like that's the fucking red line. That's when everyone needs to get out onto the fucking street and stop the tyranny because like this is it. This is happening.
It's, it's Donald Trump in particular has been saying that he would do things like this since his last term of government. The difference was they didn't have the balls to do it. And they were constrained internally by people who were like, I don't want to be in the history books as someone who enabled a fucking genocide, so I'm going to stop Donald Trump from being maximum Donald Trump. Whereas this time around, he's surrounded by sycophants and suck-ups and everyone who is willing to do whatever it takes to get this vision fulfilled. And they don't even have a clear idea of what the vision is. It's just, as we saw from that Hegseth, the signal chat, it's one government official saying, I got the impression from Trump that he wanted us to do this, which is interesting. Do we had a green light? Yeah, like do we have a green light?
I understood. My understanding was that XYZ and he wanted us to do this, says fucking Stephen Miller or whoever. Which is, I don't know if you know this is a tactic that Adolf Hitler used back in the day as well. He never said, like, directly, go and commit a fucking genocide. But everyone in his administration...
Well, there was Mein Kampf.
Eventually, yeah. But, like, that was a treatise on, it was an anti-Semitic screed and like, planning. So he laid the groundwork with those materials. Like, that's his Project 2025, if you will. But...
Yeah.
But Hitler himself very rarely gave out direct orders to do things that were war crimes until much later in the process, right? In the early days when he first rose to power, it was a lot of like, well, what do you think Adolf would do? Like, I'm leaving it up to you. Leave it in your hands. I'm delegating, but like, impress me. And it's the same kind of tactic where Trump is not saying, go commit a fucking genocide, round him up and send him to the fucking gulags. But he's going, we said we were going to send him to prison. We're rounding up Venezuelan gangs, and we're doing it by any means necessary. And everyone in his administration goes, any means necessary? Does that mean any means? Or I guess we have to commit like genocide, right? Like I guess that's what he wants, right? And it's getting them to do it's this like a mob boss way of talking, where it's like I'm not going to say to do the thing, but if Tony Soprano says I want it taken care of, everyone around Tony Soprano knows what the fuck that means, right?
Yeah, I think it's that, but I do think there is a certain level, because the difference is Trump's got social media and he's fucking blasting this
Yeah.
from his social media platforms as well. So there's like people are interpreting it, they're doing the thing, and then he's backing it in and forming a propaganda piece around it. And we know that Trump, like, you know, you could say some leaders probably wouldn't even know how to log into their Twitter profile. Like, Trump definitely does know how to log in to Truth Social or whatever he's using, right? So, yeah, I mean, he's maybe he's just inferring, you know, he's like passively enabling stuff, but then he's also backing those decisions in very publicly.
Yeah, and his rhetoric is obviously, very very supportive of all of those things. It's just disgusting, man. And neither here nor there, but like I just noticed she was wearing a Rolex Daytona, and I was like, man, you have to wear a $60,000 watch to go and oversee the fucking gulag. Like, do you have to be that level of out of touch? Like, I don't know, man.
She's obviously had her hair done recently as well, because that looked a bit.
I mean, she looks great.
Yeah,
she looks great in the Birth of a Nation fucking propaganda video that she's participating in. Friend of the show, Polyverse, is writing in, where the heck is Antifa? Because it's getting a little fascist out there. Yeah, I don't know. For all the leftist Antifa being a bunch of like hardened criminals that were, out and about in 2016, you don't see much of them nowadays for whatever reason. I honestly, I think everyone's getting freaked the fuck out. If you are a someone who's been protesting, the war crimes in Gaza, like. And all of a sudden, you're getting scooped up off the street. People people who are just doing normal First Amendment student protest shit are getting scooped up off the street and sent to some fucking black site somewhere. And they're people and you see that happening. Guess who's not going to go out onto the fucking streets next time, right? It is meant to be a deliberately chilling message, right?
And I want to take that. I do want to transition to the Turkey article, but we've got one more Trump story to get through before we can look at sort of how, I guess, if you think it's, you've seen like things like this before, you're right. But the other weird thing with Trump, a notable thing perhaps that Trump has done in the last week and a bit, is signed an executive order calling for the shutdown of the education department.
Yeah, which is not how that works. Needs an act of Congress. So you can't just sign a fucking piece of paper and say, I now live on the moon. Like you can't just just because you signed a piece of paper doesn't make that true. Like,
but what's been evident over the last 3 months is that they're still able to shut these things down in effect by firing half the workforce.
In effect, yeah.
Funding. So basically, there's already been people that have been walked out the door from Department of Education. And the Department of Education, we should also sort of outline what it does in America. So the Department of Education doesn't set curriculums. What it does is sort of primarily allocate funding to different institutions. Not necessarily public schools. I think it only something like, out of all the public schools in America, only like 14% of them have received federal funding. It's primarily universities, other private schools,
and they all they administer like Pell Grants, scholarships and people's student loans. That's probably the bulk of what they do. Like,
but they can affect policy in America by shifting the money around, of course, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, if you think about the fact that the Trump administration has been deliberately targeting universities as the center of the woke movement and sort of pointing that as the origin of all evils, then it makes sense that they would try and remove funding for these organizations. Now, of course, the official line is
they like their Americans real dumb, as Trump once said. I love the poorly educated, right?
Yeah. The what their public line is, of course, is that they just want to push it all back to the states. But it's unclear as to how they're going to do this without causing massive, gaps in services.
So you assume that you seem that they're interested in avoiding massive gaps in services, which they are not.
They've said that they aren't going to, they try and do it. There's a quote here from the actual executive order. Trump said his administration would close the department beyond its core necessities, preserving its responsibilities for Title I funding for low-income schools, Pell Grants, and money for children with disabilities. So, and like in terms of the total budget as well, by the way, it's like less than 2% of the US budget is the
But 2% of the US budget is a shitload of fucking money, right?
Well, it's several hundred billion, as far as I'm aware, isn't it?
It's billions. I don't know. It's a shitload.
But if you want to say we want to try and cap government spending, the Department of Education won't make a dent.
The Pentagon. You need to go to the Pentagon because that's where all the fucking money is. But they're increasing the funding to the Pentagon, aren't they? Interestingly.
Yeah.
So, the idea that so they're outsourcing, they say they're going to outsource the administration of a lot of these efforts to, I think it was the Bureau of Commerce or something like that. But they've also cut the funding to the Bureau of Commerce. So it's like they now have 40% less money, but 3 times the amount of work to do. But it's just not going, it's not going to fucking work. Of course that's not going to fucking work. There's just but as I just said earlier, their intent is not for it to keep working. Their intent is to break things. One of the Treasury guy hopped on was on a television interview the other day and said, my grandmother, my mother-in-law, she's 94. This guy's a billionaire, by the way, one of the 13 billionaires in Trump's cabinet. He goes, if she stopped getting her Social Security check, she wouldn't call. She'd just assume it's going to be sorted out and wait for the next one. And this was their justification for shutting off the phone line that allows people who are elderly and infirm and disabled to be able to call in to Social Security and monitor the status of their payments and make changes and whatever. So they're cutting the offices, the physical offices that you can go into for these Social Security programs. They want to cut the phone line for disabled people and old people. And they just expect that everything's going to work out. And he says, do you know who calls in? The people who call in are the criminals, the scammers. They're the ones who are going to call in. So that's a justification for shutting off the phone line. It's no, if you do this, you must know people are just going to die. People are going to become homeless and then go out onto the street. If you're disabled or if you're extremely old and you can't drive 3 hours to the nearest not shut down fucking center, you're just going to stop getting your check and you'll fucking die. That's what's going to happen. And they don't care. They want them to die. They're happy for them to die because they don't give a fuck. They want the system to break. They're trying to break it. That's what they're doing on purpose.
Well, I think some people are trying to break the system. But then they also think that they'll probably be able to rebuild it and fix it to something better, which I think is
it's just no way.
Delusional.
Polyverse is writing sorry to interrupt. This is smaller than the other Trump stuff, but did you hear this one? Relevant to online world and podcasts. So this is an article to the Daily Beast, which says Tim Pool has been added to the White House press pool. Tim Pool is a hyper-conservative US influencer. And you'll remember was one of those people we talked about a couple months ago who's getting paid by Russia.
Cool and normal,
just White House press pool stuff. You just get some fucking guy who's getting paid by a Russian cutout to spread misinformation. And now he's in the White House just reporting on stuff directly. The AP, the Associated Press, no, you can hang out in the hallway and pick up scraps left by the New York Times. I don't know how anyone else gets their news because they all get it from the AP. That's their whole fucking business model, is it's a wire agency. We give everyone else the news and they buy it from us so they don't need to have fucking, reporters in the White House. But yeah, Tim Pool's allowed in, but the AP isn't. That's cool.
Yeah, so one of the things I want to transition to, but off all the Trump deportation stuff and the crackdown on free speech, you can see similar things happening in Turkey. And things like this have been happening in Turkey for many years now. So Turkey's coming up to an election. The other day, the Istanbul mayor, Ekrem Imamoglu, if I've pronounced that correctly.
I'm sure you haven't.
He was expected to be announced, to announce that he was going to run. And police rocked up at his house and took him into custody with charges of graft, whatever that means, and aiding a terrorist group. So what they've alleged is that he
had too good of a chance of winning, and so they've decided to take him out.
Well, there's this thing called there's an organisation called the Kurdistan Workers' Party or something like that, which, it's a political movement and have done terrorist things within Turkey that, Erdogan, they've been sort of used as the catch-all sort of other, group that we need to protect ourselves against.
The other group, the Kurds have been the others in that region for many generations.
Yeah, despite the fact that there's not really a huge amount of links between, as far as I'm aware, between the Kurdistan Workers' Party and the actual the Kurds in like northern Iraq and Syria and stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, Adam.
Yeah,
you can just say whatever you want. As it turns out, nothing means anything.
I think the charge is that he's allegedly collaborated with these guys somehow. But anyway, no evidence of that. As far as we're aware, just that's the charge. He's been hauled off and goodbye. Now, you
can just say shit now. You can just say shit, and I guess you have to accept that it's true.
He was just days away from being confirmed as the presidential candidate for the opposition party to Erdogan's. He's basically the main opposition to Erdogan's organisation party. So people didn't like that, and they started protesting in their thousands in Istanbul. They also got rid of all the guys. Like he's the mayor of Istanbul. They just yoinked him from that, that office, and a bunch of other things happened as well.
I believe that's part of the Article 3, the yeeting clause of the Constitution. Yes. I think that's all cool and normal. So
so they've basically started detaining people out of these protests. So there are, dozens now, not necessarily hundreds as far as we're aware, but dozens of people have been arrested and thrown, and journalists included were just like yoinked off the street and held for a couple of days, then released, and then a few more were, arrested. So they're not necessarily, they're operating perhaps within sort of some more, almost more bounds than the US are at the moment, like to some degree. And they've been cracking down on social media posts. There's this 21-year-old guy who was sort of, on social media was sort of touted as like the voice of the youth campaigner for Imamoglu, and he got hoiked off the street and arrested for just having a few social media posts and going to a few protests. Like, it's very similar stuff to what we're seeing in the US now, but like Erdogan's been doing this for years.
Yeah, he's
effectively a dictator at this point. He's been there for 20 years now. Maybe I got that wrong. He's like 15 or something.
Years and years. Yeah.
There was an attempted coup against him. Which I guess he used to consolidate power after the fact. At this point, I'm inclined to say that Turkey is fairly undemocratic when it comes to its federal.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's anyone that would disagree with you there. Like it's been a pretty well-known thing that he's been sliding towards Erdogan's been sliding towards authoritarianism for several years now. Like that's not a surprise. And yet, as with every single one of these fucking dictators, when they first get elected to office, there's like a glowing time profile where they're like, is Erdogan exactly what Turkey needs? This bold new reformers coming in to cut red tape. And it's like every single fucking one of these guys that gets in, there's some fucking glowing time profile where they're like, maybe it could be the exact shakeup that this country needs. And it's like, it never is. It's always the fucking guy who ends up being an authoritarian dictator shithead, right? Like... time never misses an opportunity to be completely fucking wrong about these guys.
And what's concerning is that in Turkey, in this instance, and also in the US, is that they're not just targeting people for throwing a rock at a protest or something. It's like, no, this person made a very specific social media post, and we've found that person, and now we're going to go and arrest them.
Yeah.
So
the age of surveillance capitalism, when the idea is, we're not just trying to sell you fucking Mars bars, but when every single element of your online life, all of the behavioral surplus that they're sucking up to sell us Mars bars, that can then be repurposed and weaponized by the state in order to track you down if you have a single thought in your head about opposing the regime, right? It's the same machinery. It's the exact same fucking your metadata. You posted this on this site at this time, and we know it was your computer because it's your IP address. It's the same way that they sell you fucking toothpaste is the same way that they're going to track you down and throw you in the fucking gulag. That's why it's bad. It's not because of the selling of the toothpaste. It's that they've created an entire machinery to fucking, track every single person, to know the thoughts that they have in their head and the feelings that they have in their heart. And yes, capitalists use it to sell you stuff. That's not the dangerous part. The dangerous part is when they start fucking coming for you and rounding you up and putting you up against the wall. That's when it's fucking dangerous.
And of course, this move by Erdogan's straight out of Putin's playbook is that you have elections. The elections are run
elections,
very well.
quote unquote.
The elections are very transparent. They're run very well, but you just remove all credible opposition before they get to that election.
And you put up, and this is what Putin does, you put up puppet opposition groups as well. So you divide the opposition across, you've got the Social Democrats, you've got the Communists, you've got the far left, you've got the super far left. And so all of the opposition gets fragmented across 5 sock puppet opposition groups. Some of whom are real, some of whom are, probably, paid and set up directly by the Kremlin. AstroTurfed, fake opposition groups who tend to have a lot of good things to say about Putin for some reason, even though they're the opposition. And, the only person on, the right side of politics is, who is it? Well, it's Vladimir Putin. You've got to vote for him. So it's this dual thing of creating, a situation where all popular opposition is, destroyed before they can even get up off the ground floor. And then the opposition that does exist is highly fragmented, which divides the power base. It is a playbook that has been adopted by various authoritarian regimes to great effect. And so it looks like you had a quote unquote free and fair election where you won by whatever, 80%. But of course, there was no real free choice to begin with. It was Coke or Pepsi, and Pepsi was actually Coke in a Pepsi bottle.
Which is a good way to segue to Australia now, and that Australia is going to the polls for the federal election on May 3rd. So we've been saying there's an election coming for 6 months, and they did leave it quite late. We were thinking it would be earlier than this, but there was a cyclone in Queensland, which, look, Labor, I want to say, they've been pretty politically savvy over the last couple of weeks.
They've been playing like a party that wants to fucking win for a change. Yeah, that's nice.
Delayed the announcement, sort of threw the opposition sort of off kilter, which has left Dutton sort of scrambling a bit because we've been getting increasingly closer to this election and they just still haven't really said anything about their policies. And so, they had to do a budget. So because they delayed this election announcement, Jim Chalmers had to put together I'm assuming that they would have had the budget sitting there for ages, but they put together a budget for the next year, which I don't actually know. Does that stick if they lose? I don't know how that works.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Anyway.
Presumably, once the new party gets in, if government does turn over, then the new party gets to do whatever they want to do, right? So
yeah. But anyway, they got to do just basically an extra week of sales pitching for Labor policies, which worked out well. And then on the day of the budget reply, Albanese went in and was like, I'm going to call the election. So that sucked all the wind out of the sails of the budget reply as well.
Love it. It's almost like they want to win this next election. It's crazy. It's like they're playing deliberately strategically.
There was a poll, and the polls, honestly, I reckon they're going to be... I reckon the polls are going to be pretty well off the mark this election. I just...
Why do you say that? In which direction?
Well, now they're saying that the, YouGov and a few other polls were saying, Dutton's now the preferred Prime Minister. Now this week, it's swung back the other way. Now Albanese again is the...
Dutton has had a uniquely bad 3 weeks in the media. Yeah. There was this article that we're talking about where he put forward this citizenship referendum proposal, which fucking...
So he could deport people?
Yeah, which fucking nobody asked for, nobody wanted,
And he didn't check with anyone in his cabinet, with his shadow cabinet, didn't check with anyone in the party, just fucking started saying stuff. Again, and this is not the first time he's done that.
Adam, it's called leadership, okay, mate? If you...
Is it a leadership or is it a brain fart?
No, why would you check
Whoa.
anything with your shadow cabinet when you can just get on television and just say what's on your mind?
I don't know.
We've
I
just
think
spent
Dutton-
a
got a really-
full calendar year beating the shit out of the current government, saying the referendum that they had on the yes vote for Indigenous representation to Parliament was a waste of $400 million and divisive and all this sort of shit. And now they've said, hey, can we have a new referendum where we can kick dual citizens out of the fucking country if we don't like them? And everyone was like, what about all the stuff you said about divisive and a waste of money? And he's like, yeah. Don't worry about it. This one's going to be divisive, but for good reasons. So,
it's been an absolute sort of shit show. So there was a few other things that Dutton has been saying.
No, but they've got their signature policy of nuclear power, which is going to cost a couple trillion, be available in 8 to 12 business years. I mean, they've got great policies. What's not to love?
And because we're getting so close to the election now, the effect of I think Australians are hopefully they will be clever enough to start picking up on the fact that there is a real lack of detail in the Liberal platform.
The guy who said if you don't know, vote no, and spent a year saying that has no policies, and so Labor's just looking at it going, well, if you don't know, vote no. Like, is that? Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, that's the thing you said, and now you're not proposing any policies, and now. So we're just going to do the thing that you did. I mean, can that possibly work? I mean, are we allowed to do this?
I mean, obviously, historically, there's precedent for like the 2014, I've forgotten his stupid name.
Bill Shorten, Anthony Albanese.
No, the
Malcolm Turnbull. Scott Morrison.
Before that. No, earlier.
Mark Latham. Too early.
Tony Abbott.
I basically said I really there was a process of elimination there. I really hit every target. I shot a Tony Abbott sized hole around that answer.
Tony Abbott got in on a 6-point plan.
Mm-hmm.
Very digestible.
He can only hold 6 points in his brain at any given time.
But
stop the boats and then stop the boats 5 more times.
But they had the 6-point plan, and I guess they could articulate each of those points, whereas they do have something similar, but it just says they've got a plan. It doesn't actually sort of articulate what that plan is.
They've got concepts of a plan, as Donald Trump once said.
There are headlines. It's like, we're gonna make your community safer. We're gonna get the government back on track.
Oh, back on track actually means nothing. But like, I was more concerned about. So when you said communities are going to be safer, how is that going to happen?
I don't know.
You're going to spend more money on police because you seemed like you said you didn't want to spend more money on public servants. So I was just confused how that was going to.
Going to announce the policies before the when
election.
The campaign election's
the election's been called now, so it's now.
No,
so what are the? Yeah.
I'll get. You're cutting out. Sorry, I can't hear you.
No, I can hear you perfectly.
Sorry, you're gone. I've lost you. No,
yeah. Again, you're not breaking up. I can hear you crystal clear. It's actually the best connection I've ever had. Oh, he's gone. He's left. Okay. Well, I guess I'm voting for him.
Yeah. So I don't know. Whether or not this will swing back and forth. I imagine the Teals will sort of keep their hold on their seats. I don't imagine seats swinging drastically back to Liberals that were lost.
I'd be curious to see what the polling is on a seat-by-seat basis with the Teals. I imagine some of that stuff will start coming out soon. It is difficult to poll that way on a seat-by-seat basis. It's much easier to poll on a national level to see whether there's been a swing to or against Labor or the Liberals, or who's the preferred Prime Minister, Albo or Peter Dutton. The Labor Party does have a few advantages going into this election. I think mostly people see them as a steady pair of hands, like Sky News. There was this great clip that was going around on social media that I saw just before this. So it's like Sky News was clearly going after a vox pop that, made Albo look like a shithead. And just everyone that they spoke to was just like, I don't know, he seems all right. They're like, what do you think of Anthony Albanese? It's not going to be easy under Albanese. And they're like, yeah, he seems okay. Yeah. Like, and they're like, what? Yeah, he's fine. No one was like, oh, love him. Everyone was like, he's okay. Like, which is, what? good enough. And they asked people about Peter Dutton, and they're like, yeah, nah. So I was like, this is Sky News. Yeah, they couldn't find anyone on this fucking street that was willing to say that they loved Peter Dutton. So like, Labor's got a few advantages. They've been seen as more or less a steady pair of hands. They haven't blown a massive hole in the budget. You know, inflation is, you know, there was a rate cut. And so they're going to $100 million deficit in the next budget. Okay, but like compared to the tripling of the debt that happened under the previous government. Like, I'm not saying there aren't problems. Obviously there are, like cost of living, affordability, all that sort of stuff. You know, none of that stuff is great for an incumbent government, but they've announced another tax cut. You know, that's the second tax cut, right, in this latest mini budget. You know, they've got some positive things for them to sort of run on.
Cheaper GPs, like
Medicare, like they've got a line, it seems like, for this election cycle. They don't appear to be caught flat-footed. Whereas if you compare it to the other side of politics, Peter Dutton has been a very good attack dog in opposition, but we haven't seen, as you say, any policy. And I think people are starting to recognize, like, he has a severe disadvantage, Peter Dutton, in that he's a cunt. And people see that. Like, they can tell that about him, that he's just, like, not a likable guy. Like, he's just a bit of a dipshit. And I think people see that on television and they realize that. Like, that's starting to cut through.
So we'll see. The next few weeks should be interesting. So if possible, we'll pivot to more Australian stuff. But I'm sure there will be just as much crazy coming out of America. So, you know, we'll bring it to you here. You can come back next week. We'll talk about it. We'll make a joke or two, and then we'll cry together.
We do. It is lucky that we have obtained world exclusive rights to reporting on the American news. News. The downfall of the American empire. It was a costly deal, but I'm glad we landed it. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist. That's Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and mother flippin' TikTok at our handle at Unnatural Show. Make sure you follow me on Blue Sky and Instagram at my handle at George Tsipos.
And you can follow me down to, I just got added to this chat.
Oh no.
This like it's titled War on Immigration Chat.
That's weird. Who's in that group? I don't know that one.
I don't know.
I'm not in that group chat.
Weird pictures of JD on a couch and
oh no.
And
scroll up, Adam. Scroll up.
There's Tulsi Gabbard surfing. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Oh, she can surf. That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's relatable.
Yeah, she's just really cool. She can surf.
Yeah, you don't want to see those JD couch pictures. Those are even worse than the footage I saw of Saxon and his little brother today. So thanks for listening. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, White Lotus really kicked up a notch last episode, didn't it?
Just really, just horrifying. And they kept cutting back to that scene. I didn't want to see it the first time. Why are you showing it to me a second time?
I was like, maybe it was a fever dream. Oh, no.
Maybe it was a fever dream. No, it was real. Yes, that's normal stuff to do with your brother. Okay, cool. Bye.